Ladies and gentlemen, this is Danny Gutierrez. Thank you so much for joining me again on this episode of Total Fight Mike. We have a crazy weekend of fights, jam-packed loaded from Friday to Saturday with a whole bunch of fights, mixed martial arts and boxing. We have a few events from Bellator, 3 to be exact, and then we have UFC Fight Night, and we also have boxing, Errol Spence Jr. versus Sean Porter. So let's just get right into it. So first I'll be talking about the Bellator card, and that is airing at 8 a.m. The prelims are going to be airing at 8 a.m., and this is the European series. This is Gallagher versus Salazar. That'll be a very interesting fight. I won't get into that fight too much since it will be airing on the Bellator app on the European series. I will actually be talking about the bout that will be airing later that night. They will both be airing in Dublin, Ireland. The Benson Henderson and Miles Fury jury card will be airing on the DAZN app and the Paramount Network. So Benson Henderson is going to be taking on Miles Fury jury. So now both of these guys are UFC veterans, but Benson Henderson is much more decorated than Miles Fury jury is. Benson Henderson is a southpaw fighter, is a wrestler who's actually got a Taekwondo black belt. It's a very intriguing style. He's a very pretty good kicker, very powerful kicker. So it has huge thighs with a very good wrestling base. His top game in terms of his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very good. Whenever he gets dropped, he actually does try to put the feet on the hips to try and defend himself a little bit, as well as establish wrist control. He does try to control the posture on guys if he does get dropped, and I do say that because he does get dropped quite a few times in his fights, but he'll later come back and be a little bit more dominant after he figures out what his opponent's throwing at him. Miles Fury jury is actually very long. He's very light in his feet. I believe he's also a southpaw. I could be wrong about that. I do believe that he's also he's an orthodox fighter. Pardon me. He is an orthodox fighter. He was released by the UFC, but he has quite a bit of experience. He's fought Donald Cowboy Cerrone. He's fought Chad Mendes. He's fought Diego Sanchez. He's fought Takanori Gomi. He's fought quite a few guys. He's even fought Andre Touchy-Feely. He's fought at featherweight and at lightweight, and that's something that Benson Henderson and Miles Fury jury both shares, that they've both fought at 2 different weight classes. Benson Henderson is the former UFC lightweight champion, and he had fought at welterweight. When he came into Bellator, he actually fought against Andrei Koreshkov. Excuse me, guys. He actually fought against Andrei Koreshkov, even though he lost that fight. His elite level championship experience is there, and Miles Fury jury will be having his hands full, and this will be his Bellator debut. Is going to be a very interesting fight because Miles Fury jury actually does come from a wrestling background himself, but he's actually taken to striking. Like I said, he is very light on his feet, and he is pretty heavy-handed, and he's pretty accurate with his punches. Benson Henderson has actually got a pretty decent jab himself and an overhand left. He will step over into orthodox to throw an overhand right. If he does catch a kick or look to come in for a takedown, he will enter and step forward and be in the orthodox stance and throw that overhand right. Benson Henderson is a very powerful puncher himself. Like I said, he is a Taekwondo black belt, so he does have powerful kicks, very unorthodox kicks. He doesn't throw them that often, but they are there. So that's something that Miles Fury jury should be worried about. So Bellator also has a card on Saturday while it's competing with the UFC and boxing. So Bellator does have its hands full a little bit. This will be the second round of the Featherweight Grand Prix tournament, and this round will feature the current Bellator Featherweight champion and Patricio Pitbull Ferreira against Juan Archuleta. Now, Juan Archuleta is a very well-rounded featherweight, and Patricio Pitbull is actually very heavy-handed. This is going to be a very interesting fight, very intriguing fight, especially as far as styles go. Juan Archuleta has a lot of experience. He's got a ton of experience. He's very heavy-handed himself. He's pretty explosive. He does like to throw leg kicks and body kicks himself. He is very light on his feet, and he does like to come forward with the pressure a lot. And we've seen in the past with guys who have fought Patricio Pitbull for his title have given him a lot of trouble, especially if they've been in his face the entire time, giving him loads of pressure, especially when you see that in his Daniel Strauss fight, his Joe Warren fight. Joe Warren actually gave Patricio Pitbull his first loss. That's when Bellator was on MTV2, and that was also a featherweight tournament. That was when Patricio Pitbull was very, very green. And you saw that in his fight with Daniel the Weasel Weichel. He was putting the pressure on Patricio Pitbull, and then Patricio Pitbull in the second round caught him with a left hook, I believe, or was it an overhand right? He had caught Daniel Weichel while his back was getting pressed against the cage, and Patricio Pitbull was getting tagged with punches, and he landed an overhand right. When he fought Daniel Straus, he was getting pressured, but then he came back and hurt Daniel Straus with some punches, took his back, and then choked him out. So we've seen guys give Patricio Pitbull a lot of trouble when they put a lot of pressure on him, when they have a very strong wrestling foundation, when they work his hips and they work him up against the cage. Juan Archuleta is going to need that, but he doesn't necessarily do that too much. He does look for a takedown, and if he gets you up against the cage, he will try and dirty box you and elbow you, throw some knees. He will try and grind it out. He'll try and actually get the Muay Thai plunge so that he could land some strikes. He'll try and disrupt your posture so that he could throw a lot of strikes. He's very, I won't say dirty fighter. He doesn't like to throw eye pokes or headbutts or anything like that, but he is an in-your-face type of grinding fighter. He is actually very smart as well. He isn't too aggressive, but he's actually very intelligent mixed martial artist. So we will see how that fight goes. Like I said, Patricio Pitbull has very heavy hands. He's actually the current featherweight and lightweight Bellator champion. In his last fight, he actually knocked out Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler has actually knocked out Patricky Pitbull, the brother of Patricio Pitbull. So Patricio Pitbull has that multiple weight championship level experience. Like I said, very intriguing, very explosive, very interesting fights here for Bellator. So now we're going to move on to our fourth fight of the weekend, which is UFC Jared Cannonier, versus Jack Hermansson. Now, Jack the Joker Hermansson and Jared Cannonier, or Jared Cannonier, however you pronounce it, actually is a pretty interesting fight in the UFC middleweight division as far as who's going to be next in line for the title shot, in my opinion. And that is because Jack Hermansson's on a pretty hot streak, and Jared Cannonier, even though he's on a 2-fight winning streak, he has looked really good in this new weight class at middleweight. So we were going to see where these guys stand in terms of who's next in line for a title shot, especially with Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya having their unification title bout. And we just saw Paulo Costa and Yoel Romero go at it, so those guys are still in the mix. Like I said, a very high-stakes fight in the UFC middleweight division. So Jared Cannonier and Jack Hermansson are similar but different. So I'll start with Jack Hermansson, Jack Hermansson is very long. He does like to strike quite a bit, but where he actually gets it done very well is his jiu-jitsu, is his offensive jiu-jitsu, is his grappling, his wrestling. He's actually very good at grabbing a hold of the hips, at getting over-under control, and he's really good at throwing kicks from a distance, and he's actually good at utilizing those kicks to close the distance. He's actually polished his striking up very, very well. He actually almost, in his last fight against Jacare Souza, it was a 5-round main event, he actually almost landed a submission on Jacare Souza. So Jacare Souza is a very high-level, world-renowned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, black belt competitor. He's grappled Damian Maia. He actually won that bout with a broken arm, I believe. He actually put the arm in his gi. It was a gi tournament, and he actually won the championships with a broken arm. Very impressive, very durable, very tough, former Strikeforce middleweight champion, and Jack Hermansson was putting it on him. He was putting it on him with the striking. He hurt Jacare Souza quite a bit on the feet, and he was taking Jacare Souza down. He did not care, and he was taking him down quite a bit. He's not afraid to go down to the ground with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, and you saw that in his last fight with David Branch. David Branch is the former WSOF, that's now the Professional Fighters League, the former WSOF middleweight and light heavyweight champion, another 2-division champion. Jack Hermansson shut him down, took him down, choked him out. It was actually pretty aggressive and pretty definitive. So now we're going to look at Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier actually also fought David Branch, and that was actually Jared Cannonier's coming out party to the middleweight division. And Jared Cannonier defended himself very well on the ground against David Branch. And I say that because David Branch is a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt himself under Renzo Gracie. Renzo Gracie being the cousin of Royce Gracie, the gentleman who won UFC 1, for those of you who don't know. So very strong lineage of jiu-jitsu here, and Jared Cannonier got taken down. He had his back taken at one point in time, but he kept his composure, and with just patience and technical superiority, I'll say, and positioning and maneuvering, he was able to get back to his feet and break away. David Branch actually had his back for a short stint, but Jared Cannonier did a really good job at putting his shoulders to the cage and cage crawling, and he did a very good job at utilizing his hips to get back to his feet. It was very interesting to see that because Jared Cannonier does come from two different weight classes. He moved down from, he originally started his career at heavyweight and he was fighting in Alaska quite a bit in the regional circuit. Then he got his UFC contract. He went down from heavyweight to light heavyweight to middleweight. Had some wins, had some losses in both weight classes. He actually fought Glover Teixeira and hurt Glover Teixeira. But Glover Teixeira actually took him down and submitted him. But Jared Cannonier has got the experience. He's fought tough, durable guys in the past. This will be a very interesting fight for both guys and a very high-stakes level fight. When it comes to Jared Cannonier's striking, he is very powerful. He's dropped guys in both heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight. He's the only gentleman to do so in UFC history in the UFC octagon. So it's very, very tough. His power translates even all the way to down to 185. And when you see his body at 185, he looks cut. He looks shredded. He looks serious. He looks like he's ready to go. He is a little bit shorter. He will be giving up some reach to Jack Hermansson, but he is very explosive. And his last fight, you saw him stop the legend Anderson Silva with an inside leg kick. And it was very powerful. It actually got Anderson Silva to wince and scream in pain. He stopped the fight. Like I said, very powerful, very durable, very tough. This will be a very interesting fight. I would call it a striker versus grappler matchup, but Jared Cannonier has actually got some very good jiu-jitsu defense. He's got some very heavy hips coming from two heavier weight classes and fighting heavier guys. You're going to have heavy hips. Jared Cannonier is actually very tricky. They call him the Joker, and he's actually quite the trickster when he's in the clinch. He likes to hand fight and go for the trips as well as try to manipulate your hips. He actually did that against David Branch. That's how he was able to get him down, was just pure trickery and pure aggressiveness. He just kept attacking. And it was a very interesting position that Jack Hermansson got David Branch in. So both of these guys have fought very tough guys. Both of these guys are very experienced. Both of these guys are going to see where they are in the UFC middleweight division in the UFC after this fight, whoever gets this win. So now we are going to move to the pay-per-view boxing fight provided to you by Fox Premier Boxing Championships. So we have Errol Spence Jr. taking on Sean Porter. So we do dabble in boxing here on the Total Fight Mike. It is total fighting, so everything fighting here. So Errol Spence Jr. is a wizard of a fighter. He's a very intelligent fighter. He's going up against Sean Porter. These guys are at 147 pounds, I believe. And Sean Porter is a short, stocky boxer. He's actually fought guys like Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman, Paulie Malignaggi. He's fought a wealth of guys. He's fought so many tough, durable guys. Errol Spence Jr. has fought a bunch of guys too. He's undefeated, but his last opponent, who's very well known, is Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia might be the smallest opponent who Errol Spence Jr. has fought, but Mikey Garcia is a phenomenal tactician. He's a very durable guy, and Errol Spence put it on Mikey Garcia, so he took that O away from Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia was undefeated going into the fight, and now he's not anymore. Errol Spence Jr. took away that from Mikey Garcia. So Errol Spence Jr. is a southpaw fighter. He's very intelligent. You hear stories of him sparring with Floyd Mayweather and him not wanting to leave the ring and him wanting to keep going. I do believe he is your IBF welterweight champion. He is trying to take the WBC championship away from Sean Porter. This is a unification bout. This will be a very high-stakes fight. It's actually trying to set up a fight with Terrence Crawford, who's another welterweight champion who's actually fighting for Showtime. So it's going to be a very high-stakes fight. There's a lot of high-stakes fights throughout this entire weekend. So Sean Porter is a right-handed fighter. He's short and he's stocky. He actually started out his athletic career in football, and he's actually a very athletically gifted guy. He actually started off his boxing career in the amateurs at the 160-ish range. He actually dropped down to 147 pounds through sheer discipline and hard work. He's actually won. This is actually his second time that he's held on to the title. He lost the title against a gentleman an English fighter by the name of Kell Brook. That was a very close fight, very, very, very close fight. Errol Spence will have his hands full against Sean Porter, the short, stocky, orthodox fighter who likes to come forward and throw bombs. Errol Spence Jr. will have a ton of trouble trying to get rid and trying to get Shawn Porter off of him. Like, Shawn Porter is very aggressive, very durable, loves to come forward and throw heavy hands. However, he is known for being a kind of a dirty fighter. He does throw. He won't intentionally throw elbows and headbutts. However, he will try to come forward and dominate. He does have heavy punches. He does have heavy hands. Excuse me, guys. Trying to put my keys around my neck. He does have very heavy hands. He is very explosive, whereas Errol Spence Jr. is a much more of a magician. He's a high-level tactician from a southpaw fighter, being a southpaw fighter. He is very young and he's very smart. So we're gonna see what happens in this fight with both guys being very intelligent boxers, both guys being of that championship caliber level. Shawn Porter hasn't had too much trouble with southpaws. He has fought a couple southpaws, but he hasn't had too much trouble against them. But Errol Spence Jr. is on an entirely different level. He loves throwing that straight left to try and keep his opponents off of him. He's very sneaky with his counter punches. Like I said, he's a wizard on his feet, so we're going to see what happens in that fight. So Shawn Porter versus Errol Spence Jr. is going to be a phenomenal fight. Orthodox versus a southpaw fighter, a unification bout in the welterweight division in boxing, which is 147 pounds. So we will see what happens. We also have UFC, Jared Cannonier versus Jack Hermanson. And we also have Bellator, Gallagher versus Salazar, Benson Henderson versus Miles Fury, both of them in Dublin. And we also have Juan Archuleta versus Patricio Pitbull for the bantamweight title in the featherweight Grand Prix. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will catch you guys in the sequel. Peace.